Welcome to the Palace of Westminster, where in the last hour or so, Nigel Farage has been speaking just down the road and unveiling his new top team, his shadow cabinet, his spokespeople, whatever you want to say. More importantly, the team that he hopes will actually go into government, enact reforms, policies, and over the coming years take the fight to Labour, the Tories and the Liberal Democrats. He said it's going to take on the never-ending allegations that he leads a one-man band, although as he always says, it's better to be a one-man band than a no-man band. So who do we have? Well, first up was Richard Tice, the party's deputy leader, who Mr Farage said will be the deputy prime minister if he wins the next general election. Mr Tice, more importantly, will be heading up a new super department. Sounds like there's going to be a bit of reorganising of Whitehall going on should Reform win the next election. Tice is going to take on trade, business and energy, taking on some of the issues closest to his heart. A former businessman, very wealthy in his own right before moving into politics, and actually one of the foremost champions against net zero, even before entering Reform UK. He'll now take on net stupid zero, he says, reindustrialising Britain, lowering energy costs for both family and industry, bringing jobs back to Britain and championing free trade around the world.
Imagine an economy that's growing at 2.5 to 3.5, sometimes 4%, year in, year out. That's what we had in the 80s and 90s. But sadly, anybody under the age of about 40 to 45 doesn't know what that feels like. That's where we've got to get back to. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we need a new super department covering business, trade, energy, including housing, with a total focus on growth and prosperity.
Next up was Robert Jenrick, the big surprise that we were all looking forward to. Mr Jenrick is getting Shadow Chancellor. He branded Rachel Reeves a wrecking ball and said that her taxes are ruining the economy, driving people to leave Britain, hiking the cost of living for ordinary people, and said people are struggling and he wants to address that. And I wrote an analysis this morning before the announcement, when we all pretty much knew that Mr Jenrick was going to get this top job, suggesting that the reason he's been given it actually is because he is the most anti-Liz Truss person at the top of Reform. He voted for Rishi Sunak, something that you won't hear him bang on about much these days, but I'm sure it will come up in these meetings that he'll now be having in the City of London with investors and bankers, because the number one thing that Reform remains concerned about and wants to prevent happening should they enter government is a Truss-style mini-budget breakdown. If voters, if the city, if investors feel that Reform UK's sums don't add up, as they undoubtedly didn't in the party's manifesto in 2024, then they could do a Truss and they could pull the plug and they could hike borrowing costs and cause a borrowing crisis and ultimately force the downfall of the government. And Reform are wanting to be really careful that all their sums add up and that they prevent that situation from happening. Now, we didn't get much of a manifesto from Robert Jenrick. A lot of the questions in the Q&A session was sort of stonewalled because Rob and Nigel are doing a press conference tomorrow in the city where we were promised they will spell out a bit more about what Robert Jenrick's thinking is on the economy. And the question that I think we're all wanting the answers to is on welfare spending. Robert Jenrick, back when he was a Tory MP, actually wrote a Telegraph op-ed accusing Reform and Nigel Farage of entering a welfare bidding war with Labour to see who could promise the most, specifically around the two-child limit, where Reform have flip-flopped about quite a bit. They previously said they'd scrap it, and then they said they'd fund a lot of promises by bringing it back for non-British working people. So I think we're all looking for a bit more clarity on that.
Businesses are fighting for survival right now. Factories are closing. Investors are leaving the country. And people are suffering. Everyone in the country feels hard up right now. People are working all hours, and then they get to the weekend and they've got nothing left. The normal expectations of life, they feel like luxuries right now. People just want to get on. They want to buy a nicer house, to buy a car, buy a second car, go on holiday. They want to take their kids out for a meal at the end of the week, on the weekend. But for so many people across our country, these things feel out of reach at the moment. So Nigel, thank you for giving me the opportunity to oppose the wrecking ball that is Rachel Reeves and this Labour government.
Next up, we had Zia Youssef, who is the party's new shadow Home Secretary. And this was not a surprise at all. Zia Youssef has been leading on general policy for quite a while, but led the party's announcement on what they call Operation Restoring Justice or Operation Restoring Borders. Last summer, the party's programme for mass deportations of illegal migrants, ending mass legal immigration and putting a stop to the Boris wave, which saw about 1.5 million people come into Britain during Boris Johnson's 2 years of government after the pandemic, and is set to cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of pounds, with a lot of those people not working, claiming benefits, and only having to be in the country for a couple of years before they can start doing so. So that's going to be his big policy focus.
Look, I'm the son of immigrants myself, and my parents between them have given almost half a century of service to our NHS. I'm really proud of them. So no one knows better than I the invaluable contribution migrants can make to this great country. But we have to be honest, the sheer scale of immigration over the last 3 decades has broken Britain. More people have turned up on our beaches uninvited in the last 7 years than stormed the beaches of Normandy on D-Day. And those people, instead of being detained and deported, have been given free accommodation, free meals, free access to healthcare, free taxis, free leisure activities at the expense of the British people, to the tune of tens of billions of pounds every single year. And that's just illegal immigration. If we talk about legal immigration, just since 2010, the equivalent of the populations of Edinburgh, Leeds, Sheffield, Nottingham, Stoke, Bristol and Cardiff have been added to our populations. So is it any wonder why it's so difficult to get a GP appointment? Why everyone feels unsafe because violent criminals are let out of jail because of overcrowding? We don't have enough prison places. Why tens of thousands of people, to our eternal shame as a country, are forced to wait more than 2 days in accident and emergency? Just imagine that.
And finally, we had Suella Braverman, the former Home Secretary, who was unveiled in a slightly surprising role, but she seemed to be particularly keen on it, as the shadow Education and Skills Secretary, also, ironically, the party's Equalities Minister. Suella Braverman frequently railed against diversity, equality and inclusion policies, both in and out of government, both as a Conservative and as a Reform MP. And indeed, in a moment that made me laugh, she promised that she would abolish her own job as Equalities Minister on day one of a Reform government. She spoke very passionately about improving standards in schools, restoring discipline, teaching children to be proud of British history, and ending the system of universities where millions of pupils are taking on all this debt, not getting good jobs because they're doing Mickey Mouse degrees. And she put universities on notice, especially those that stifle free speech and are very, very reliant on foreign students in order to balance their books.
Too many of our universities are failing our young people. Today, 700,000 graduates are unemployed, each of them carrying on average £50,000 worth of student debt. The truth is that too many of our young people have been sold a lie about university, wasting 3 years of their lives on Mickey Mouse courses, all while we have a chronic shortage of nurses, builders and care workers. The system is broken. So I tell you what we need. Instead of Tony Blair's 50% of young people going to university, this is what we need. We need Nigel Farage's 50% of young people going into the trades.
Mr. Farage notably didn't make any announcements around some other big jobs that would be required, namely Foreign Secretary and Defence Secretary. I do wonder if he didn't do that because he wants to have a couple of vacancies as bargaining chips to maybe get another couple of big defectors, either from from the Tories or from the Labour Party. But he promised it would just be the start, and even hinted that now he's got these top figures announced, he may even be able to take a bit more of a back seat rather than leading this one-man band. So that was this morning's big announcement. It may be recess, but it's never recess for Reform UK. They're always launching these big announcements. So we've got the spokesman, the Shadow Chancellor spokesman, tomorrow in the city with Mr. Farage. Who knows? We may have even more Reform press conferences in the days to come.
Thank you very much. Harry Horton, ITV News. Nigel Farage, you'll be well aware that two of the people standing beside you also wanted the role of Shadow Chancellor, and they haven't got it. You say you're not a one-man band anymore. Are you sure you can keep this band together for the next however many years until the next election? And then a question to Zia Youssef. Have you spoken to the man to your left about the Boris wave, as you call it? And have you two put your differences aside?
Well, I don't think Zia's held back on the Boris wave too much, do you? And from what I can remember, Jenrick resigned as Immigration Minister. What more do you want? What more do you want? He resigned. He could see what was going wrong. He tried to put the right things in place. So I don't think we need to answer the question, frankly. I think it really rather speaks for itself. Gary from Channel